here is what is going on in the this morning. This is incredible news this morning in the House Health and Welfare Committee. There's a bill that's being presented that will repeal the needle exchange program in Idaho. In case you didn't know it, folks, we in 2019 a bill passed that allowed for the Department of Health and Welfare to engage in needle exchange programs. This, of course, is under the guise that drug users are using dirty needles and sharing dirty needles and thus contracting communicable diseases and other sorts of complications from using bad needles. And so rather than start building up the morgue with bodies because of dirty needles, that we would have a needle exchange program where users could come and exchange a dirty needle for a clean needle, and hopefully get some other support, but that's another story. But I'm just laying out the facts here. So in 2019, Representative Megan Blanksma presented this bill. It passed. It got signed into law. And here it is. This yeah. So this was the bill. I have it here. And it had some concerns, obviously, because there's folks that live in big cities. You might be watching if you've lived in Seattle or Portland or Los Angeles or San Francisco, where these programs exist, and there's all sorts of data on both sides of the fence here that show how much it helps or how much it's hurting. That being said, anybody who in 2019 who opposed this bill because they saw it as a slippery slope to something worse, well, my friends, you have been validated, because the original sponsor of that needle program bill stood up this morning in in committee to say this program got out of hand. Gee, what a shock. So this is Representative Megan Blanksma in the committee this morning, talking about how she is supporting this bill and wants to see this bill go through that would repeal this needle exchange program. So let's take a look at that.
I'd love to speak to my motion. The department has abused this section of code for years. It was intended for what these ladies said in a one-to-one exchange to try to get people help. And instead, the department has abused it by their rule promulgation. The good chairman and I have both tried to rein it in, tried to revamp it, tried to work within the code and the department to make it an effective program according to what the intention was of the original code. The department, as we all know, is fond of promulgating their own rules, going their own way, and ignoring what is in Idaho statute. And that's why this continues to be a problem. You can't fix this by putting a shall in there, because it's still rule promulgation authority. So that's why I support what the chairman's doing. This is the right thing to do to get rid of this code as written. And while I agree with the testimony that we need to provide people with help, this section of code needs to be completely rewritten. And we're at a time in session where I don't know that we can accomplish that. And I definitely know that we can't accomplish it through rulemaking authority. And so that's why I made the motion to support the bill.
Okay, so a couple of things here is first thing, she's saving her butt here, okay, because she does not want to be the one that is on the hook for this fiasco. And I'm telling you this is a fiasco because this is news that I learned this morning, that just a few weeks ago, down there in the Treasure Valley, was a story broke that at one of these needle exchange centers, there was a raid. Law enforcement did a raid on a needle exchange program. Here's the story right here. Idaho Health and Welfare to review syringe exchange programs following a harm reduction project raid. The Harm Reduction Project, that's the name of the program. And there was a raid at one of the facilities that uncovered all sorts of drug paraphernalia for cocaine, for crack cocaine, methamphetamines, all sorts, and possibly drugs as well. There's an investigation going on right now, and this is your Idaho Department of Health and Welfare that is subsidizing this program. So 5 years ago, they said, "Oh, this is just going to be a program that's going to help drug addicts and stop the spread of HIV." Well, here's where your tax dollars went. So there's a huge scandal that broke. Huge scandal. This is extraordinary, and we know it's a huge scandal because the bill's original sponsor is like, whoa! I had no idea this was going to happen. Oh, really? There were plenty of people out there that goes, "This is what happens when you start doing this program. This is what happens. You start giving public dollars to give needles because you don't want to advance HIV and all this stuff. This is what's going to happen." It's incredible. Can you imagine? I posted this morning. Can you imagine if the government said, "Well, you know what? There's so many drug addicts. They rob convenience stores. They do home invasions looking for cash and items to sell for money to pay for their drugs." And that it's such a harm on society. So rather than have them do that, we're just going to cut them a check so they can go buy their own drugs, or we're just going to give them the drugs themselves. But imagine if they just cut a check to drug users. Oh, use this money to, a SNAP card for drugs. You got your food stamps and you got your drug stamps. Can you imagine? This is appalling. This is appalling. So this morning, House Bill 617, that was the bill that Megan Blanksma was all of a sudden championing now, was being presented by the chairman of the Health and Welfare Committee. And it was a close vote. You had a lot of folks coming in. The ACLU was there. All these folks coming in saying how important this was, and da-da-da-da. You had a public commenter in there who went in there and said, "When I heard about this, that you guys were doing this, I thought, well, do you guys want to be Seattle?" I mean, it's incredible. So this also just highlights what a sewer this place is. So they passed. So this was the thing. They passed this bill with good intentions, right? And then the bill makes its way into law, right? And then the health and welfare look at the statute, and then they develop their own rules, right? We would talk about rules on this show before. How the departments just like they look at the rules and they find every which way possible to use those rules to bypass what the law is and the intent of the law, right? And so this is what happens when these bureaucrats in these departments they run amok. This is the out of control government. This is why government spending, this is why government expansion is harmful to our society. And so now they're in there trying to fix it. There were some people that saying, "Well, let's make this bill. Let's have it change the language of what it is, so that way there can be more oversight." No, get rid of the program. Get rid of the program. We don't need to be paying. We don't need to be using tax dollars to be sending to programs that are exchanging clean needles for dirty needles, so people can go be drug addicts. Am I nuts? Am I nuts? Sure, a lot of you will say I am nuts, but that's not nuts. Okay, so that's what happened with the needle exchange program. It passed committee. So if you're concerned about this issue, that's a good applause. H617, it passed the Health and Welfare Committee, and it will make its way to the floor, where I am certain we're going to be hearing a lot of debate on this issue. But you cannot tell me that with this scandal that happened at this needle exchange center, where other illicit drug paraphernalia and possibly drugs, and like it just became like, what would it just become, an opium den? Where was this? This was somewhere in Boise. It had to be, right? In the Treasure Valley, Caldwell, Boise, somewhere in that region. It's incredible. It's incredible. Okay, so we're going to stay on top of that. We thank the good representatives who voted to pass this bill and try and fix this mess. But this is what happens when you play with fire. And it's very interesting that Representative Blanksma was like, "Whoa, this giant fiasco, all signs would have pointed to her. Well, who passed this law? Oh, she did." Well, I don't know. I don't want to give any tips out there to anybody who might be running against her, but this is a horrible look. This is a horrible, and this is why we can't have nice things. right? Not that this is a nice thing, but it's a funny phrase that I like to use. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break. We'll catch up and see if there's anything interesting happening in the House, and we'll get to it. But we'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government and what we were tasked to do.